Paris, autumn of 1943. A cold wind sweeps through deserted streets, rattling the shutters of old buildings. On the top floor of a worn apartment block, a young woman sits hunched over a radio transmitter. Her fingers tremble, but her eyes burn with a fierce, unshakable resolve. Every click of her Morse key is a heartbeat of the French resistance. Every signal she sends could cost her life. Downstairs, boots strike the pavement. Heavy, rhythmic, getting closer. The Gestapo is hunting the mysterious operator they call the Nightingale. What they don't know is that she is no ordinary spy. She is the daughter of an Indian Sufi prince, a children's book writer, a believer in peace above all things. Yet tonight, she is the only voice of hope for an entire underground network. This is the story of the woman Churchill's secret organization called Our Most Unlikely Warrior. Her name is Noor Inayat Khan, and this is how a gentle storyteller became one of the bravest agents of World War II. A royal lineage. A quiet childhood. Long before she was dropped into occupied France as a secret agent, Noor Inayat Khan was born into a world filled with music, poetry, and mysticism. Her life began in 1914, not in the chaos of India, but in a large, serene estate near Moscow, an unexpected birthplace for a future British spy. Her father, Hazrat Inayat Khan, was a Sufi teacher and a direct descendant of the Mughal emperors who once ruled India. He was a philosopher of peace, a musician whose instrument was his soul, and a man who believed that every human being was connected through compassion. Her mother, Ora Ray Baker, was an American woman enthralled by Eastern spirituality, a gentle presence, deeply loving, almost ethereal in her softness. In their home, war and violence were foreign concepts. Noor grew up surrounded by Sufi teachings, songs, and gatherings, where her father spoke of unity, harmony, and the power of forgiveness. She wore simple dresses, listened to her father's music, and played with her siblings in the quiet gardens around their home. But history has no regard for innocence. The Russian Revolution erupted, forcing the family to flee. They traveled through Europe, carrying only their instruments, their faith, and their children, until finally settling in Paris, in a small home near the Eiffel Tower. There, Noor came of age. She studied music at the Paris Conservatory, wrote stories for children, and spent afternoons caring for poor families and teaching their children to read. For all who knew her, Noor was gentle, to the point of fragility. A quiet dreamer who wrote tales of magical birds and mystical lands. No one imagined that the girl who cherished peace above all would someday become a soldier in a war that defined brutality. But destiny was already shifting beneath her feet. A dreamer confronts a darkening world. The 1,930 seconds passed like a soft whisper in Paris. Noor wrote, composed music, and wandered through gardens with notebooks filled with ideas. She was shy, introspective, and deeply empathetic, qualities no one associated with espionage. But as Europe began to crack under the rise of fascism, Noor saw something nobody else noticed: the suffering of those who could not protect themselves. In 1940, when the German army swept across France, Noor and her family fled once more, this time to England. The road was filled with crying children, desperate parents, and the endless rumble of tanks. Noor saw fear etched into faces far younger than hers. That moment changed her. As they boarded a ship leaving France, Noor turned to her mother and whispered, "We cannot only pray for peace. Sometimes, we must fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." These words marked the beginning of Noor's transformation from a woman who feared conflict to one who accepted the burden of resistance. Her principles never changed. She never grew to love war or violence. But she believed that freedom was worth defending, even at the greatest personal cost. This belief would define everything she did from that moment forward. Noor joins the WAAF First Steps into War. Arriving in England, Noor made a bold and unexpected decision. Despite being a pacifist by upbringing and a foreign-born woman of color, she enlisted in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, WAAF, a support branch of the Royal Air Force. Her reasons were simple. She wanted to help, and she wanted to do it in a way that fit her skills and nature. The WAAF quickly discovered that Noor had a remarkable gift, a natural talent for radio work. Where others struggled with the rapid pulse of Morse code, Noor thrived. Her musical background had trained her ear to distinguish tones and rhythms. Her fingers moved over the transmitter with effortless precision, a calm, unwavering focus. Even under stress, she remained composed, something rare and valuable: fluency in French. Paris had been her home. She spoke the language like a native. Her instructors described her as gentle but intensely determined. One of them wrote, "There is a quiet strength in her, unexpected but undeniable." That quiet strength soon drew the attention of a far more dangerous organization. Recruited into SOE, chosen because of her weaknesses. While Noor was serving with the WAAF, Britain had created a secret organization designed for covert warfare, the Special Operations Executive, or SOE. Its mission, famously described by Churchill himself, was to set Europe ablaze. The SOE needed radio operators more than anything else. And not just any operators, they needed people who could blend into everyday life, move undetected, and endure enormous psychological pressure. Noor fit the profile in ways few others did. When she was first selected for training, many SOE officers were skeptical. She was slender, soft-spoken, kind, even hesitant. She disliked weapons training, avoided exercises that involved violence, and expressed clear discomfort at the idea of harming anyone. But SOE noticed what truly mattered. Her memory was extraordinary. She could learn complex codes in hours rather than days. Her radio skills were among the best in her unit. Her appearance was disarming. No one would suspect a gentle, aristocratic young woman of being a spy. One SOE assessor wrote, almost reluctantly, "She is not suited for violent missions. But she has courage of a different, profound kind." And so, despite objections, despite doubts, despite her own moral conflicts, Noor Inayat Khan was approved for field deployment. She would become the first female wireless operator sent into Nazi-occupied France. Into the Fire, a secret flight toward France. On a moonless night in June 1943, a small black Lysander aircraft waited on a remote English airfield. These planes, specially modified for clandestine missions, flew low and fast, slipping across enemy lines like shadows. Noor was to be one of its passengers. Dressed as an ordinary Frenchwoman, she carried a single suitcase inside it, a compact but powerful wireless set, her lifeline to London. She had been given a new identity, a cover story, and a code name: Madeline. As the plane lifted off the runway, Noor sat silently, staring into the darkness. She was afraid, of course she was. Only fools were fearless. But beneath the fear was something stronger, a calm acceptance. She knew what she was stepping into. She knew the survival rate for wireless operators was terrifyingly low. She knew the Gestapo prioritized capturing radio agents above all others. And still, she went. Halfway across the English Channel, the pilot flew low to avoid detection. Noor glanced down at the dark waters beneath them. Somewhere far ahead lay France, the land she had loved, now suffocating under Nazi occupation. The moment the plane touched down in a rural field near Angers, the transformation was complete. The shy young writer was gone. In her place stood a clandestine agent entering enemy territory with nothing but a radio set, a false identity, and a will of steel. Paris. Under the swastika, Noor begins her mission. Paris in 1943 was not the city Noor once knew. German soldiers patrolled every corner. Posters warning against resistance plastered the walls. Curfew hours were strict. Fear was the dominant language. Operating a radio transmitter in such an environment was nearly suicidal. German detection vans roamed the streets, triangulating radio signals. The moment a transmission was found, agents had minutes, sometimes less, to escape before the Gestapo burst in. Yet Noor began working the very next night. She found a modest apartment, hid her radio beneath a loose floorboard, and established contact with London. Her transmissions were clear, concise, impeccably coded. She moved frequently, never staying in one place for too long. Every message she sent was a lifeline to the Allies. Updates on German troop movements, requests from resistance fighters, warnings of upcoming raids. One SOE supervisor later said, "For weeks, she was Paris. Every piece of intelligence came through her hands." But Paris was becoming more dangerous by the day, and Noor was about to lose everything around her. The fall of the Prosper network. For weeks after Noor's arrival in Paris, the SOE network, codenamed Prosper, had functioned like a finely tuned machine. Dozens of agents, couriers, and radio operators kept the resistance alive. Explosives arrived, sabotage missions succeeded, German supply lines were disrupted. But then, everything collapsed. It happened swiftly, almost violently, though not a single shot was fired. The failure began with a single betrayal, a captured agent who divulged information under extreme pressure. One arrest led to another. Addresses were compromised. Meeting points became traps. Safe houses turned into execution chambers. Soon, the Gestapo began striking with terrifying precision. Within days, nearly the entire Prosper network fell. Noor watched this tragedy unfold with growing horror. Names she had once transmitted to London, names of brave men and women, began appearing in arrest reports. Safe houses she had visited were raided. Couriers she trusted vanished, never to return. And just like that, Noor was alone, the only functioning radio operator left in Paris. For London, she was suddenly the one crucial thread connecting an entire region of the resistance. For the Gestapo, she became the most important target in the city. Return to London? No. As soon as SOE headquarters in London learned of the network's destruction, they sent Noor a message: return immediately. Abort mission. They feared the obvious. A lone operator could not survive in a city crawling with signal detection vans and informants. Every night she transmitted, she risked death or capture. And yet Paris desperately needed her. Without radio contact, the resistance could not rebuild. When the order arrived, Noor read it in silence. She took a breath, then sent her response: "I will stay." London replied in disbelief. Staying meant suicide. Leaving meant survival. But Noor saw something London did not. Paris was not dead. Its fighters were wounded, scattered, terrified, but not defeated. If she left now, that flame would go out forever. Her reply to London was firm, unshakable. As long as I can transmit, the resistance is alive. The decision stunned those who knew her. Gentle, soft-spoken Noor had just refused a direct order in order to face the most dangerous job in occupied France, completely alone. In SOE's internal notes, an officer wrote, "Her courage is extraordinary, beyond expectation. Living as a ghost. The art of staying invisible." With every other SOE agent in Paris captured, Noor's mission became not simply difficult, but nearly impossible. She had no support, no partners, no secure houses, no one to watch her back. From now on, she would live like a ghost, constantly moving. Some nights, she slept in abandoned rooms. Other nights on rooftops or attics offered by sympathetic civilians. She never stayed anywhere more than a few hours. She carried her radio in a battered suitcase, always ready to run. No pattern. She walked different routes every day. She used mirrors in shop windows to check for tails. She never returned the same way she came. Transmit in under 20 minutes. German detection vans, known as Funkwagen, roamed the city. They could triangulate a signal in minutes. So Noor developed a ritual. 1. Find a rooftop or attic. 2. Set up her transmitter. 3. Send a burst message, quick, compressed, efficient. 4. Pack up. 5. Slip into the night, before the vans could locate her. Every click of her transmitter felt like a countdown to death. And yet, she continued. Night after night. London doesn't believe she's real. As the days turned into weeks, something extraordinary happened. London began to suspect that the operator sending messages under the codename Madeline could not possibly be just one person. Her output was too consistent, her survival too unlikely, her discipline too perfect. But it was Noor, only Noor. She crafted messages while hiding behind chimneys, under staircases, inside broom closets of sympathetic households. She transmitted from the shadows of church towers, from abandoned factories, from half-bombed apartments. In one memorable report, London noted, "Her work is brilliant. She is alone, and doing the work of 6. A city of danger. Paris tightens its grip. Noor adapted, but so did the Gestapo. Every day, the enemy became more efficient. Radio detection units swept neighborhoods block by block. Posters warning of execution for aiding resistance fighters spread across the city. German officers questioned civilians relentlessly. Paranoia seeped into every corner of Paris. For Noor, the danger increased when a local double agent leaked information about an SOE radio operator who matched her description. Suddenly, she could feel eyes on her. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. Men with notebooks lingered a bit too long. Once, while buying bread, she noticed a German officer stare at her suitcase with quiet suspicion. Noor smiled softly and walked away, but her heart thundered. Another night, while transmitting, she heard footsteps on the stairs. She shut off her radio instantly, grabbed her case, and climbed onto the roof through a tiny window. From there, she crawled across the tiles as German soldiers burst into the attic below her. For 2 hours, she lay flat against the roof, rain splashing against her face, until the soldiers finally left. She later wrote in her diary, "Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something else is more important." The moral burden, Noor's deepest conflict. Noor had been raised with Sufi teachings of harmony, compassion, and pacifism. She once believed violence was the last refuge of the lost. Now she was at the center of a deadly game. With every message she transmitted, she helped resistance fighters plan sabotage missions, blowing up train tracks, weakening German supply lines, disrupting communications. She carried the weight of every life lost, every operation that went wrong, every risk taken because of her intelligence. Her moral conflict was profound. Yet she stayed committed because she saw war not as violence, but as protection of the innocent. She wrote in one encrypted note, "I do not fight to destroy. I fight to preserve what is good." This resolve was the anchor that kept her steady in the storm. The Gestapo gets close, very close. By early autumn 1943, the Gestapo was desperate. The resistance was shattered. SOE operatives were captured. And still, one radio operator kept sending messages that fueled acts of defiance across Paris. German commanders were humiliated. How could a single operator evade them for so long? They increased their patrols, deployed more detection vans, offered rewards for information, and finally, they found a lead. A French collaborator reported seeing a young woman frequently carrying a large suitcase. She lived a quiet life, walked with calm grace, and spoke French with no accent, but something seemed off. That description matched Noor perfectly. The Gestapo tightened their net. A betrayal from within. Noor's fall did not come from German brilliance. It came from something far more painful: betrayal. Within the resistance, a French agent named Henri de Ricourt, unknown to Noor at the time, was secretly working with the Gestapo. Many historians still debate his motivations, but what matters is this: he passed information that narrowed the search for SOE radio operators. Even worse, one of Noor's local contacts, someone she trusted, sold information to the Germans for money. This betrayal set in motion the final chapter of her mission. The night, everything changed. Late October, cold rain, a moon, like a thin blade hanging in the sky. Noor was staying in a safe house near the Rue Tronchet. It was quiet, dimly lit, the air heavy with the smell of damp wood. She had just finished sending a message to London when she heard a soft knock at the door. A woman's voice. Someone she knew. A fellow resistance member. "Noor, open the door. I need your help." Noor hesitated. Something felt wrong, but she opened the door. At that moment, 5 armed Gestapo agents rushed in. The betrayal was complete. Noor's first and greatest act of defiance. The Gestapo expected panic. They expected this small, gentle woman to crumble. But Noor did something unexpected. She fought, not with a weapon, but with pure, overwhelming determination. She shoved agents aside, smashed through the hallway, and raced up the stairs toward the roof. She nearly escaped. One. She was inches from the edge when 2 officers tackled her. Even then, she struggled, refusing to give them the satisfaction of easy capture. One officer wrote in his report, "The woman fought like a tigress." It shocked them. They thought they were capturing a timid operator. But what they caught was a warrior of conviction. Her secrets stay safe. At Gestapo headquarters on 84 Avenue Foch, a place of dread for all resistance members, Noor faced relentless interrogation. But unlike others, Noor had prepared herself in advance. She carried no notes. She memorized all codes. She used no written addresses. She had burned everything that could compromise others. No matter what the Gestapo asked, Noor said nothing. She refused to give her real name, refused to confirm she was a wireless operator, refused to sign any confession. Her silence became a quiet, powerful rebellion. A German officer, infuriated, wrote, "She is the most stubborn prisoner we have ever had." Another report described her as unbreakable, impossible to exploit. A prisoner at Avenue Foch. After her violent arrest, Noor was dragged through the hallways of the Gestapo headquarters at 84 Avenue Foch, a building feared across all of occupied France. Its walls echoed with the whispers of interrogations, betrayals, and broken spirits. But Noor entered with her head held high. Her captors expected a frightened girl. What they encountered was something entirely different. A woman with a spine of steel. From the first moment, she refused to cooperate. She gave no name, no information, not a single detail about her mission. When asked who she was, she simply replied, "I am nobody." This infuriated her interrogators. How could a gentle, soft-spoken woman resist so completely? Yet the more they pressured her, the more Noor withdrew behind an impenetrable wall of silence. The interrogations begin. Interrogation rooms at Avenue Foch were designed to destroy the human spirit. Officers used psychological intimidation, long hours, sleep deprivation, and relentless questioning. But Noor had prepared for this moment long before she ever stepped foot in France. She had committed every code, every name, every address to memory, and burned every scrap of evidence. There was nothing the Gestapo could take from her, nothing she could slip up and reveal. Still, they tried. Day after day, she was questioned. Hour after hour, they demanded answers. Who sent you? Where is your radio? Who is your network? Give us the names. Noor said nothing. Her silence became a kind of defiance, a quiet rebellion against an empire of fear. One officer slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "You are wasting our time." Noor's answer was calm, almost gentle. "Then stop asking." Later, a German report stated, "She is small and delicate in appearance, but completely unyielding. Her resistance is remarkable." A battle of wills, and Noor wins. The Gestapo prided themselves on breaking even the strongest prisoners. But Noor never cracked. Her moral center, shaped by years of Sufi teachings, gave her an inner fortitude that surprised even her captors. Time and again, she refused to cooperate. She refused to sign statements. She refused to confirm she was the operator known as Madeleine. And most importantly, she refused to betray anyone. Even when shown photos of captured SOE agents, Noor stayed silent. Her mind remained laser-focused on one goal: protect the network, protect the resistance, protect the mission. Her captors began describing her in their notes with a single word: unbreakable. It was meant as a complaint. History remembers it as a tribute. Noor's first escape, attempt through the rooftop. The more the Gestapo failed to break her, the more desperate they became. Yet Noor was not content to simply resist. She began planning an escape. The opportunity arrived only weeks after her arrest. One evening, she was allowed out of her cell to wash. A guard left her momentarily, unattended at the end of a hallway lined with windows and access doors. Noor noticed the roof was only a few feet away. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward the window, pushed it open, and climbed out onto the building's edge. Shouts erupted behind her. Boots thundered. But Noor was faster than anyone expected. In seconds, she was scrambling across the rooftop, running along the tiles, searching for a way down. For one fleeting moment, freedom was within reach. But a spotlight swept the building. A siren wailed. Armed guards surrounded her in minutes. She was captured, dragged back inside, and beaten for her attempt. But even as they forced her back into her cell, Noor's expression was unchanged. She had failed, yes, but she had shown them something important. She was not afraid. Her second escape attempt, the night of the locked door. The first attempt only strengthened her resolve. A few weeks later, Noor found another chance. During a transfer between cells, she noticed that one door had not been properly locked. Its latch hung loosely, barely touching the frame. She waited, watched, listened. When the guards moved down the hall, Noor slipped through the unlocked door and into a stairwell. She descended quietly, each step a prayer and a promise. Freedom was once again only a breath away. But halfway down the stairs, she heard boots approaching. Guards, more than one. Noor darted into a storage room and hid behind a stack of crates. For several minutes, she waited, heart pounding, as German voices echoed along the stairwell. A flashlight beam scanned the room. A guard stepped inside. Noor held her breath until her lungs ached. But fate was not with her. A second guard spotted the door ajar. They re-entered, searched the pile of crates, and found her curled in the shadows. Again, she was dragged back, bruised, exhausted, but undefeated. It was after this attempt that the Gestapo made a decision that changed the course of her imprisonment. Classified as highly dangerous, Noor's repeated escape attempts humiliated the Gestapo. How could this small, fragile-looking woman evade them twice? Their frustration turned into fear. They realized, if she escaped, she would return to transmitting. If she transmitted, hundreds of lives could be saved or lost. So they escalated. The Gestapo labeled her Höchste Gefahr, extremely dangerous. Not because she was violent, not because she carried weapons, not because she posed a physical threat. She was dangerous because she could not be broken. She could not be controlled. She could not be intimidated. And so they made a decision. Noor would be transferred to Germany, to a prison built for the most difficult captives, to a place designed to erase identity, spirit, and hope. The journey to Pforzheim prison. In November 1943, Noor was transported by train toward Germany under heavy guard. Her wrists were shackled, a chain looped around her waist, another around her ankles. She could barely stand, let alone run. The guards escorted her like she was a violent criminal, which was ironic, considering Noor had never physically harmed anyone. During the transport, an officer asked her, "Why do you run? You cannot win." Noor looked at him and said softly, "I run because I am free." The officer laughed, unsure whether she was mocking him or completely insane. But Noor meant every word. Freedom, to her, was not the absence of bars. Freedom was the refusal to surrender one's humanity. Life in Pforzheim. Total isolation. Pforzheim prison was not known for mercy. Upon arrival, Noor was placed in solitary confinement. Her cell was tiny, barely large enough to lie down with a single barred window high above the floor. She was kept, chained hand and foot, under constant surveillance, forbidden from speaking, denied books, paper, or writing tools, addressed only by her cell number. Prisoners later recounted that Noor's cell was unlike anyone else's. She was treated with a heightened level of caution, usually reserved for violent enemies of the Reich. The guards were instructed, never leave her unshackled, never trust her silence, never forget, she escaped twice. Her isolation was crushing. Day after day, she saw no one. Night after night, she slept chained to the floor. Weeks blurred into months. Yet Noor endured. Noor's quiet defiance. The Gestapo expected her spirit to deteriorate in solitary confinement. But even here, Noor resisted. She refused to give her real name. Throughout her imprisonment, she was known only as Nora Baker, one of her alias identities. She refused to stop dreaming. In the silence of her cell, she composed stories in her mind, children's tales, filled with hope and wonder. She rewrote characters, imagined new adventures, and held on to the belief that imagination was a form of rebellion. She communicated through Morse on her chains, tapping patterns into the metal cuffs around her wrists. She tried to signal other prisoners, sometimes receiving faint taps in reply. Through these tiny rhythms, she maintained her sanity. She sang softly, old Sufi songs, songs from her father, songs about the soul being free even when the body is confined. Guards later said, she was fragile, but she would not break. Nothing could break her. The prison guard, who admired her. Among the prison staff was a woman named Frau Schmidt, who brought food to Noor's cell. Over time, even she began to admire Noor's quiet resilience. One day, she whispered through the bars, "Why do you resist so much? They will never let you go." Noor replied, "If I stop resisting, then I let them win." Though forbidden from speaking further, the guard later confessed, "I had never met a person with such courage. She had nothing, yet she was stronger than all of us." A letter that was never sent. During her final months at Pforzheim, Noor managed to secretly write a letter to her mother. How she obtained the scraps of paper remains a mystery, possibly through sympathetic guards, or from prisoners who risked punishment to help her. The letter was never delivered. But after the war, fragments were found. They read, "Do not worry for me. I am strong because I must be. Whatever happens, know that I did not fail." This letter captures the essence of Noor. Gentle, loving, yet fiercely brave. A decision in Berlin. By mid-1944, Noor had been imprisoned for nearly a year. The Gestapo concluded that she was impossible to interrogate, too dangerous to release, and too famous to leave in an ordinary prison. So Berlin issued a final order: transfer Hauptgefangene Nora Baker to Dachau, a high-value prisoner, a woman marked as dangerous. a message to those who defied the Reich. This order sealed Noor's fate. The order from Berlin. By the summer of 1944, Noor had endured nearly a year of solitary confinement in Pforzheim prison. She was no longer the same physically. Thin, exhausted, and bearing the marks of constant restraints. But her spirit? Still unbroken, still resistant, still defiant. And that terrified the Nazi command. Her interrogators had failed. Her guards respected her. Her escape attempts made her a legend inside the prison walls. In Berlin, the Gestapo leadership concluded that this woman, this non-violent, gentle storyteller, was more dangerous in chains than many fighters were on the battlefield. So they issued an order. Prisoner Nora Baker is to be transported to Dachau concentration camp. Special treatment. Special treatment was a euphemism, and everyone in the system knew it. It meant execution. The final journey bound for Dachau. On the evening of the 11th of September 1944, Noor and 3 other captured SOE agents, Jolande Beekman, Madeleine Dammerment, and Eliane Pluman, were removed from their cells. Their wrists were shackled, their ankles fettered. Chains were wrapped around their waists. Noor walked slowly, weakened, but still upright. A prison guard watching them go later said, "She walked like someone who had already made her peace." The women were forced into a van and driven across Germany under heavy guard. It was a silent journey, no conversations allowed, no comfort, no hope visible from the small barred windows. But within that silence was something stronger than despair. A bond. Though Noor had been isolated for months, she was suddenly among allies. Again, women who shared her courage, her mission, her refusal to break. The journey lasted hours. The air was cold. The guards avoided eye contact, as if ashamed. When the gates of Dachau finally appeared, the women knew this was the end. Yet Noor did not tremble. She did not look away. She stepped through those gates with dignity, as though entering not a camp of horrors, but a place where truth would finally be revealed. The arrival at Dachau. Dachau was not a prison. It was a machine built to crush human beings. Barbed wire glistened under the moonlight. Watchtowers loomed like silent predators. The smell of smoke lingered in the air. Noor and the 3 other women were taken to the main yard, where SS officer Wilhelm Ruppert, notorious for his brutality, waited. He observed them with cold detachment. "Name?" He barked at Noor. She looked at him, eyes calm, and said, "Nora Baker." Even now, she refused to reveal her true identity. Ruppert struck her across the face. Noor staggered, but did not fall. A guard later recalled. Her silence angered him more than any insult could have. The night before, the women were placed in separate cells. In the darkness, Noor sat curled on the floor. Her chains rattled softly each time she shifted. Some guards believed prisoners prayed on nights like this. Others sobbed or screamed or pleaded. But Noor did none of these things. Instead, she whispered to herself lines from the stories she once wrote, memories of her childhood, verses from her father's Sufi teachings. The soul is free. No darkness can bind it. Hours passed. The camp was eerily quiet. The world around her seemed to shrink to nothing but breath, memory, and the faint glow of dawn waiting to break. The execution. Dawn on the 12th of September, 1944. Just before sunrise, the guards returned. Noor was led into the camp's courtyard. The other 3 women were forced to kneel first. They were executed quickly, without ceremony, without dignity. Victims of a regime that feared brave women more than armies. Then it was Noor's turn. They brought her forward. Her face was bruised, her body frail, but her eyes, still bright, still alive. Ruppert demanded again. Name? Silence. He struck her. Once, twice, a 3rd time. Still, she refused to speak. And then, as the guards raised their weapons, Noor whispered a single word, her final message to the world. Liberté. Freedom. Not a plea. Not a cry. A declaration. Shots rang out. And Noor Inayat Khan, the Sufi princess who became a spy, fell. She was 30 years old. Aftermath. The silence that echoed. Her body was cremated. Her ashes, like millions of others, disappeared into the atmosphere above Dachau. The Nazis believed they had silenced her forever, but they were wrong. What survived was not her body, but her refusal. Refusal to betray others. Refusal to abandon her mission. Refusal to surrender her identity. Refusal to let evil dictate her choices. Her final word, liberté, echoed far beyond the camp walls. It traveled across continents, through survivor testimonies, into wartime archives, and finally into the memory of a world struggling to recover from darkness. After the war, truth comes to light. When the war ended, SOE officers combed through records to find what happened to their missing agents. Noor's file was one of the most troubling. She had simply vanished from the network. It wasn't until former prisoners and camp guards testified that the truth emerged. A guard from Pforzheim described her. She never cried. She never begged. She never broke. Another from Dachau recalled her final hours. She died with courage that I have never seen in any man. SOE officers who once doubted her suitability for field duty were stunned. Their reports changed. Their assessments shifted. She was no longer viewed as the shy, gentle trainee. She became something else entirely. A legend. In 1949, the British government awarded her the George Cross, one of the highest honors for bravery. France honored her with the Croix de Guerre with Gold Star. Her name was carved into memorials in London, Paris, and Dachau, etched not in sorrow, but in triumph. Noor's legacy. A light that never went out. Today, Noor Inayat Khan stands as one of the most extraordinary women of World War II. Not because she fought with weapons. Not because she led armies. Not because she carried out sabotage missions. But because she embodied a different kind of heroism. The heroism of moral clarity. She fought without hate. The heroism of silence. She protected others even when it cost her everything. The heroism of resilience. She endured loneliness, captivity, torture, and death. The heroism of conviction. She believed freedom was a right worth dying for. In a war dominated by men, guns, tanks, and bombs, Noor's strength was subtle, but no less powerful. She was a warrior of spirit, a fighter whose courage came from compassion, and whose defiance came from love. She showed the world something extraordinary. That bravery can be gentle. That resistance can be quiet. That even a children's storyteller can change the course of history. The final image, a story that continues. If this were a film, the last shot would return to the attic in Paris, the place where Noor first sent her secret signals into the night. Dust motes float in the air. A radio sits in the corner, silent now. But the memory of its clicks, Noor's voice traveling across enemy lines, lingers like a heartbeat. We pull back slowly, rising above the rooftops of Paris, hearing her final word echo softly. Liberté. The camera fades to black. A single line appears on the screen. Noor Inayat Khan, 1914, 1944. She refused to surrender.